Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. My name's Todd Pearson, here with my friend and partner, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, it's really good to see you. And Garrett, it's good to see you. So I'm excited about today's episode. This is going to be a lot of fun.
We have a great podcast for you today. And if you have been listening to us on a regular basis, you know what we're all about. And if you're joining us for the first time, you will find out quickly that we are a podcast that promotes the visual arts, and we give you a little bit of everything, and today is no exception to that. You may get an artist profile, you may hear us talk to a gallery owner, or like we did a couple weeks ago on an episode, the director of a museum. But today we're going to go into something completely different, and I'm pretty excited about it. I've known this gentleman for a few years now. His name is Garrett Ellwood. Garrett is the team photographer for the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Rapids. Garrett, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely. Nice to meet you, Wes, and happy to be here.
Were you always interested in photography?
My dad definitely had a above average knowledge of photography. So just being around him got me into it. But it didn't really click with me until probably high school, like that you could do this for a living or have a career or major in it. But it was definitely around as a kid.
So did you take photography classes in high school?
Yeah, I think that was the first time you could really take one was in high school. And, the first time in a dark room, for me, that was it. Like once I developed an image and saw it come up in the dark, like I was hooked from then on. I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then realizing that I could study it in college and pursue it, I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, 100%.
So did you go to school here in Colorado?
I didn't. I ended up in Tucson at the University of Arizona. Colorado didn't really offer anything like, I don't know. I just remember looking at the time and thinking CSU didn't really offer a photojournalism or a creative art. They offered a few things, but nothing you could really major in, I thought. So I ended up in Tucson.
How was that as far as the school and your, I guess, introduction into collegiate level classes?
Tucson was great. Like, not what I expected, but I ended up just loving the place, and the program was very creative. So it wasn't a journalistic, it was just a very creative free form, but I had some really great professors and had some really good classes, and a couple professors in particular that led me to where I am, really, to get, helped me get my start and take off from there. So it was definitely a huge move for sure.
Now, were you shooting sports when you were in college?
No, I didn't shoot any. We were really good. I was in Arizona when Steve Kerr was there, Sean Elliott. Like basketball was huge. Football team wasn't very good, but sports were big, and I didn't shoot any of it, which is crazy.
And did you grow up playing sports? Were you into
absolutely.
sports? Okay.
Football, baseball, tennis, golf. All
the works. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you had that interest, but not necessarily covering sports at university.
Yeah, I don't know why I never thought about it. I just didn't. I was more into the creative graphic design. I was taking sculpture, figure drawing, all this other art and media stuff, but just never looked into the journalism part or the sport part of it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's funny because when I was in college, I went to college at Black Hill State in South Dakota, and I worked in the media relations department and did all their photography from staff photos to all the sports stuff. But I took no art classes, which now I kind of regret, but I was at every game shooting, and it was just a blast. So
I wish I would have.
Then it ended. I didn't see the horizon of going professional on like at a professional level.
So when you graduated from the university, where did you end up, or what did you think you were going to do?
I was maybe my junior or senior year, and I had a professor who had a cousin who was a set decorator for films in Hollywood. So long story short, he hooked me up with this guy because they were filming a movie in Tucson, and I did some special photography on it. It was Iron Eagles 3, the old Louis Gossett Jr. movies. They were filming the third one of those. And so I got paid to shoot kind of like stuff on set, like family photos and stuff that they needed in the movie. And they paid me, I don't know, they paid me like $5,000 or something, which if you're in college, it was just ridiculous. And so, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to Hollywood. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. I can, it was so easy to get this job. I'm sure there's 100 more of them. And so I was just hell bent on moving to California and working in the movie business, doing the same thing. And I did. I moved there with a friend from school. And so this was back, let's see, 91. I graduated, and so it was the spring of 92, right after the LA riots. So it was a perfect time to move to LA. Are you guys familiar with Sammy's Camera, big camera store in California?
Yeah.
They literally burned Sammy's to the ground in part of the riots. And they used to have a display case where all the lenses and stuff that was burned, there was like melted cameras and stuff. It was crazy. But yeah, like 2 weeks after all that happened, I moved out there just like clueless, So.
And then this year they burned Central Camera out of Chicago to the ground.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. That was where I bought my first digital camera, Central Camera, burned to the ground. I was sick when I read that.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
That's
interesting. Yeah.
So you move out to LA, you start assisting other people, or where did you go from there?
So just right off the bat, worked at a restaurant, worked at a golf course. And then my roommate got an internship with the Clippers. And that was huge because he introduced me to their team photographer, who's Andy Bernstein. I'm sure you've heard of him, Todd, but legend in the basketball sports field. Like, he did the Lakers, Clippers, Kings, so it was the Forum Sports Arena. It was everything in LA. And, he shot Magic Bird. Epic. The guy's a legend. And so I met him through my roommate, got to shoot one game on the court, and basically just hounded him, to be his assistant, to pick up his laundry, to do whatever. Cause I just figured this was the guy to get in with. And he just blew me off for an experience, long time, just no luck. Really? Understandably, because he's a busy guy. He had help. He, had no interest in helping me. Until he needed somebody. He had an assistant that left, and timing was right, and I was there and started working for him.
Consistently, or just on a game to be game basis?
It was kind of, I went and I met my now wife. I was in Florida for a year, as we talked about that early. I was in Orlando for a year, and then kind of reconnected with him when I found out that he needed somebody, and then moved back to LA for full-time assisting with him in, I want to say 95, 96, somewhere in there. 95 maybe. Yeah.
Nice. I bet that was an incredible experience.
It was the greatest thing ever. I mean, I remember the first 2 weeks. After the first week, we did a couple things, and then we went to Hawaii for Lakers training camp. And I was like, this is the greatest job ever. I've never want to do anything else. It was so amazing and such an education. What I learned in Arizona was it was probably really good for me because it was visual. It was framing. It was layout, composition, all that stuff. But I didn't learn anything hands-on. I knew nothing about lighting. I knew nothing about real, the nuts and bolts of photography. So probably in a good way, though, that I learned that creative stuff early, and then I learned the nuts and bolts of it later on. But, I learned it all from Andy. It was crazy. The amount of lighting from buildings to portraits it was just an awesome experience. Yeah. And I owe everything that I have now to that guy. It's crazy. I wouldn't be here without him for sure.
And so how long were you doing that?
Let's see. I think it was 3 years. I want to say 96 I don't know, 98, 99. So it wasn't that long, but I had an opportunity to take the team job in Charlotte. And so it was kind of a no-brainer to make that jump and have my own thing. A scary one, but yeah, it was awesome.
I'm sure that had to been kind of a huge jump, because there's a ton of responsibilities. It's one thing when you're assisting somebody, but it's a whole other ball of wax when you're the man with the plan, right? Like,
true.
You have all those responsibilities. It falls on your shoulders.
But at the time, though, without being Andy's assistant, I was at the last three of the three-peat. I was in the Last Dance, like all that stuff. I was there for that. Like, it was the most incredible experience, and a bummer probably that it happened to me when I was 25, 26 years old, just because I don't know if I fully appreciated the moment, but I do remember trying to, soak it up and enjoy as much of it as possible, because it was an incredible time. And, Andy was at all of that stuff, which meant I was there with him and got to shoot quite a bit of it too. So it was pretty cool.
And you weren't just doing the Lakers, you were doing the Clippers and the Kings all at the same time?
He had all those contracts, and then we would travel too. Like during those years, we'd follow the Bulls through the Northwest, or, if they were on a road swing through wherever, we'd jump on that too. So,
wow. What a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah.
It's one of those things, just like you were saying, like you're young and you're in the moment, but maybe not really appreciating what that was at that time. And now you look back at it and you're like, holy crap, like,
yeah, no,
it couldn't have worked out any better. Right?
No, for sure. And it was, obviously I wish I would have been there for all 6 championships, but just to be a part of those last 3, it was, some awesome memories, and all those people that I worked with back then, I still work with now. It's crazy how that group of people, photographers within the league, is really the same group that are here in Orlando.
Wow.
For this. So it's pretty cool to have shared memories and all those experiences through all those years. Pretty awesome.
Absolutely. So since you referenced that, Garrett, tell our listeners kind of where you're at right at the moment. I know you can't go into great detail, but just kind of give us the lowdown of what's going on with your job right now.
It's quarantine, which means I'm sitting here in my hotel room. Just waiting for the NBA restart and getting tested and hopefully clear the quarantine and getting back to work. Really, that's getting back to some basketball and doing what I do, which is, I'm just lucky to be here, really lucky. So it's good.
Yeah, man. You said earlier you've been out since like March 11th is when the NBA, right? Is that right?
Yeah, for me, March 11th was the last day I worked. It just, everything stopped with us. And I mean, that's all I do is sports for the most part. So yeah, that just everything ended then. So it's been a while. It's been a while to get on a plane. That was super weird. So much of what I do is travel. I travel a ton. And the best part of it was just, being home with the kids. That was awesome. Like a lot of really good time at home. So silver linings, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for sure.
You said you had 3 kids. So
3, yep.
For somebody that has the occupation that you do, being a sports photographer and a team photographer, like you said, you're on the road all the time. So that's going to be kind of difficult. People always think that traveling all the time is really glamorous, but it might be glamorous when you're 25 and single, but when you have 3 kids and a wife and you're on the road all the time, it's not quite as glamorous, right?
Everything's a trade-off, right? So it's a wonderful job. I'm so lucky, so appreciative, but my summers suck because literally from April, May, June, July, August, I'm gone, when the kids are out of school and, I'm gone for 2 weeks, home for a week, gone for 2 weeks, home for a week. I do the US Open tennis too. So that's another 2-week chunk, at the end of summer. So it is nice to be home for summer for once. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I bet. So this whole pandemic thing and being, kind of on pause the last few months, it probably gave you a new appreciation for what you get to do. I think it's easy when you're in the moment. Like when I talk to people and I tell them, hey, I get to go cover, a Nuggets game Friday night. And they're like, oh, really? And then I go, you know what? That is pretty cool. They think it's cool, but I think sometimes we take it for granted. And then you go, you know what? That is really cool that I get to be down there on the court and I get to be part of that action. And it really does give you an appreciation that you get to do what you love and then, get to do something that most people give their left arm to do.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine like owning a restaurant or, some of the other businesses that you could be in right now, like just devastating. So fortunate to have my job, fortunate to be back at work at this point. Just, pretty thankful all the way around. But you never know. Things can change in an instant like they have been. So,
yeah. Getting back to your career path to where you're here with the Nuggets as team photographer. So you end up in Charlotte, North Carolina?
Yeah, I did another like 4 year stint there. Didn't know anybody, but had the Hornets job back at the old Hornets when they were the Hornets, I should say. Had a friend that had some connections with the Panthers, and then I got the Carolina Panthers job at the same time, which was ridiculous, really cool job. And then I shot through another friend. I got hooked up with World WCW Wrestling, which WWE bought out, but I shot that for 2 years, and some of the craziest, crazy experiences happened with that. Wild stuff. So it was a really, it was a chance to be my own thing, have my own teams, kind of build up my my business, and it was just a cool experience. Like I'd never lived on the East Coast, and it was really cool.
Right on. And then you had the opportunity to come back to Denver, back to Colorado.
So, yeah, I don't know if you remember. So then it was like 90. Oh, I guess that was 2002, 2003, something like that. The Hornets moved to New Orleans. And just as that happened, the Nuggets position opened up. And then these jobs just don't open up. Like guys stay in them forever. So it was just luck of, timing and everything. And the guy that was doing the Nuggets left. And for me, it was a no-brainer to come back home because my family's still here. And so I guess it was 2003, somewhere in there, the year before Melo, moved back to Colorado. So I've been here since.
Nice. Right on, man. As a team photographer, what are your duties? It's not just you showing up on game day and covering the game. You have a lot of other additional duties as team photographer.
Yeah. And Todd, a big part of what we do as NBA photographers is we use strobes. So that's a huge part of the preparation setup and our product because it gives us such an advantage over anybody else that's shooting those games just because of the quality. And probably one of the things that have kept me in the business and kept us in the business is because of strobes. I'm convinced of that.
It gives it a totally different look.
Right. And we're able to shoot
what I'm doing where I'm not on strobes at a game and I'm shooting high ISO film speed for those that aren't photographers and and don't have that luxury. So you're able to freeze the action and use a lower film speed. So it's not quite as noisy in the digital world. And so what does a normal game day look like for you? Like, what is your routine on game day?
Well, having 3 kids, for me to have room to work is huge. So a lot of times I'll go into the Pepsi Center, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, edit a previous game, emails, phone calls, whatever. But I'm able to go into the arena and do that stuff. And then once the teams have practiced, shot around for the day, like They usually finish at noon. Then I'll go set up my cameras. I do that because there's a prep game. There's usually something before the game that gets in the way of you doing your setup. Obviously, Denver's pretty easy to do because I have everything pre-wired, pre-lit, pre-clamped. So I'm just putting cameras up on the backboard, the overheads, kind of wherever I decide to do them. It's all sort of ready to go. I just need to put them in there and kind of turn everything on. So it takes like an hour and a half to set that up. And then the prep games will go on, and then I'll do some other stuff. And then a lot of it's behind the scenes stuff. The guys arriving for the games, locker room stuff. Like Joker plays ping pong before every game. It's just shooting all that stuff. It's super important for our social media people, for the league. The walk-ins have become so important with the athletes coming in the building, what they're wearing, all that stuff is sponsored now. Like it's almost, we laugh because if I shot people walking in the building and their shoes during the game, that's like 90% of what I do anymore. It's crazy. Those things are so important. It's just how the game's changed.
And I don't want to get to that because that's something as for somebody that freelances for a news service. My particular news service does not require me to cover any of that stuff. But some of the other news services, like, Dave Zalabowski from the Associated Press and Isaiah Downing from USA Today, they're always shooting shoes.
Right. Yeah.
And those guys shoot sports all the time, so they know exactly what they're looking for. But you have to actually take a moment and focus on shoes and any other kind of sponsor type stuff, because those are all sellable images.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll get emails throughout the day, like PJ Tucker's coming in from Houston. He's going to wear a pair of shoes in warm-ups that are going to be different from the first quarter pair of shoes, that are going to be different from the second half pair of shoes. So there's a guy that wears 3 pair of shoes that need to be photographed during the game on top of everything else that's going on, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and the game itself. And that's the visiting team. I'm there as a league representative, essentially. So I'm covering both teams' content, not only just the Nuggets. So it gets, kind of crazy and confusing. But the whole idea of that is that we don't have to travel to every game. And that way you get coverage. Like I'm covering basically for Houston, and they don't have to travel their team photographer to Denver, and they still get their content because I'm covering both teams.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
I didn't realize that. I thought that as team photographer that you don't always travel with the Nuggets when they go out of town.
I'll do like 1 or 2 road trips with them a year. If they play Zion or LeBron, or it's a big game where we'll want extra coverage from the league standpoint. But most of the time I do not until playoffs. And then once playoffs start, then I'm with them the whole time. But that's actually kind of a nice thing, because once season starts, then I'm not with them, or I'm not traveling all the time. Like I'm home a lot, which is good. The summers are where I travel more than any other time of the year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. So who feeds you? Does the league feed you all the information? Is there somebody that works with the league that feeds
absolutely.
the information like, hey, so-and-so is wearing these different pairs of shoes during the game, and we need coverage of all that?
Yeah, because of all the sponsorship deals and licensing agreements that the league has, then it all comes through NBA photos, and that's essentially who I work for. And they'll reach out to me and say, so-and-so is walking in and he's wearing Armani. Make sure you shoot him head to toe as he's coming down the hallway, because somebody wants it, or someone sold it already. And those are huge parts of what we do now.
It wasn't like that when you first started out.
No, guys hated to have their picture taken in the hallway. There was a while where David Stern actually wanted guys to wear suits, and they rebelled against that. And then they thought you were being a snitch because you were shooting them in the hallway. So, it's amazing how it's gone from, you being the bad guy to being the good guy now. So it's pretty funny.
And it's big money. There's big money involved.
Huge.
And anytime you're talking professional sports, I don't think people realize that You're in a different position as a team photographer,
Sure.
but there's a lot of rules that photographers have to adhere to and by.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole list of things, and
There's a whole hierarchy of who gets what position, of where you can go. Of having rubber lens shades. I mean, just as far as the NBA goes, and every league has their own quirks and their own weird stuff. And that's when I go to shoot an NFL game, it's like, man, I can't break all the rules because I don't have all the access. So it's switching from those sports is funny sometimes. You forget.
I'm sure it's like a totally different mindset. It's
yeah.
You're at the top or the king of the hill in certain sports, but you don't always have that same access with some of the other sports.
Right.
I want to back up a little bit because a lot of people that listen to this podcast, like we've talked about before at the beginning, they have no idea all the different things that photographers do, and especially you yourself. So at the very top, you probably won't even perceive it that much if you're just a regular person there enjoying the game. You'll see like a flash go off, but in the very top of the Pepsi Center and in all arenas, there's a catwalk system, and that's where your strobes, the flash, that's where you have things rigged.
Correct.
I assume you're using mono heads up there and not power packs.
No, packs. Oh yeah, no.
Using packs. Okay. So you get full
yeah,
full power.
2,400 watt packs. It's, basically we're creating daylight.
Right.
And every arena essentially has two sets for us, one for the team guy and one for a visiting NBA photographer. So if I go to, Houston, that there's a set of lights that I can plug into when I show up there because it's owned by the NBA. But essentially, like you said, it's lit to create daylight and freeze the action. And so we can shoot at 100 ISO, 200 ISO, and use it for billboards, ads, all that stuff. But there's a lot of equipment involved, huge amounts, and people have no idea. Like just the strobes alone, you're talking about $20,000 worth of gear in the catwalk just for a set of lights.
So how many packs do you have set up in the Pepsi Center?
In that building, you have 4 per set. You have 8 for hockey and 4 for basketball, just a smaller surface to cover. So,
gotcha.
Some buildings you have more, some you have left. So some buildings have 12. Just depends on how high or how big the facility is. Sometimes we do use monoblocks. We light different venues all over the place. In Vegas for Summer League, there's small buildings. Here we had crazy lighting we had to do beforehand because these buildings don't even have catwalks. So we're putting them in the lighting trusses. It's just a whole different animal, but it's something that we have to do every time we shoot, an NBA game.
And that in itself, like you said, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but for people that don't know, it's a lot of work. You got to make sure that everything is firing properly. And then you have, for people that aren't photographers, you have little radio transmitters that send a signal to those packs to fire them when you click the shutter. And sometimes for whatever reason, you'll get some kind of interference and they don't always work the way they're supposed to,
Sure. No, and that's a huge part of what we do is all the remote cameras too. And I don't want to get too technical because that stuff, you can get lost in it, but I have to have multiple cameras work with the strobes, which is actually a total nightmare because usually you can only do one camera, and we're talking about syncing, anywhere from 2 to 20 with that one strobe. And so we have these things called Flash Wizard 2s. They do a lot of math. They figure out all, when to fire all these cameras. When you do it enough and do it every day, you just kind of set it up the same way. And it's, you don't even think
it typically works, right?
Typically, but that's the whole point, is to reduce all those mistakes. Like, if it's a last second shot, I get one crack at it, where you guys are over there, like, motor driving, 10 frames a second, and you're going to get something where if my lights don't go, then I don't get a picture. So, there's always that added stress of, making sure your stuff always works, for sure.
And how many cameras are you shooting with? Sorry, Todd. How many cameras are you shooting with?
Usually 6, 2 in my hand and then 4 down court. So if the action's down the court and they go to the basket, I hit a button and it'll fire those 4 cameras, which are pre-focused on basically where a guy's dunking, rebounding, in that area. So it was different when we used film, for sure. And you had to think about frame count and all that stuff, but it's all tethered. It all feeds directly back to the NBA. They edit it, they deal with all of it, and they send it out, via Getty. So it's a whole different animal these days.
Wow.
Better and worse,
Yeah. There's trade-offs, like you said before.
Yep.
There's trade-offs. Yeah.
And I find this fascinating as a photographer and for somebody that's not on strobe. So it's pretty intense, all the things that you need to do pre-game. And then the fact that you have all these cameras that you're working and you have them pre-focused to capture. And like you said, you have, for people that don't know a lot about photography, when you hit that shutter and the strobes go off and the catwalk, it takes another moment for those to recycle. There's a recycle
Correct.
time with those packs. So if you hit the shutter and you're either late or too early, you're not going to get that shot. So it's a lot of experience, a lot of time behind the camera, and then knowing how the action sets up and knowing, all your equipment, the whole circle of everything that's in that process.
So it's an interesting part of how I came to be that was my responsibility back in the day for Andy. When I worked for him, he had like 10 cameras that we travel with, but you remember Jordan's last shot against the Jazz, the game winner in game 6. Basically, I was responsible for that whole thing working. Not taking the picture, not pushing the button, but I set up the lights and was responsible for the whole system of that thing. And you always see that one shot, but there was 15 other angles of it, and you see them every once in a while. But that was one of the moments where if it didn't work, you wouldn't have all those images. And in Sports Illustrated, I think only half of their lights worked at that moment. So that was really kind of how I got my career going, was that I understood this system and how it worked, and I could make it work when it needed to. And that, that's probably why I'm still doing what I'm doing, because I was able to master this thing early on, and pretty cool to be part of that history and those moments. It was a pretty awesome time. But we're still using that same stuff. It's crazy. Those same camera equalizers, like it's 20, 25 years old. We're still using those.
You know what? If it works, don't change it. Don't screw with it.
Yeah,
right?
no, I agree.
That's what you kind of realize after doing this for a while.
But the stuff that worked with the film cameras works as well with the digital cameras. It's just a matter of timing them out, but pretty incredible that we're still using the same stuff.
So when you first started, you guys were shooting film, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Our handheld cameras were actually Hasselblad, medium formats, which is one of my most favorite cameras. I loved shooting with that. But, you would shoot Polaroids before the game to see your exposure, if you were getting flare. And then a 220 back was 24 frames. So you were changing film during timeouts, and you had to get the film to the courier who was waiting in the truck dock after the game, because it would get shipped out that night. Film was awesome. I mean, I love the look of it. I miss it. Digital is definitely easier. Film, you really had to know what you were doing. Your exposures had to be on the money. It was just more stuff to pay attention to, for sure. But started in the film days, definitely.
Yeah. I think if you had that experience with film, it makes you a better photographer. Because like you said, you had to completely know what you're doing with all that. And I can't imagine shooting and having to continually load film backs all the time. But that said, you were also, and I noticed that shooting next to you, you're on strobe, so it's kind of a different deal, but you're not always just laying on your shutter. Like when I hear some of the other photographers, they lay on their shutter all the time. But I imagine having that film experience, you really are anticipating, like what you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're shooting. I pay attention when I'm down there on the floor, and a lot of times you've hooked me up where I'm like sitting next to you or a couple spaces away, and I can hear your camera and I can hear other people's cameras. And I've observed you, actually stopped to observe you shooting and how you shoot. And I can tell that you started in film because you really contemplate like how the shot is setting up. You know what I mean?
I hear you guys too on the motor driving, and I always feel like you guys are getting the same moments. You're just getting 4 or 5 before and 4 or 5 after. I usually with basketball, you're kind of getting the same moments. It's just that I get one crack at it, and then you guys can pick out the frame that you like because you got the whole sequence.
That's true, but that's also a pain in the ass because you have like all these other frames that you're kind of scrutinizing, and we'll talk about editing in just a second. But with trying to get stuff out to the news services, you're constantly transmitting the images through the game. So the more you shoot, the more you're weeding through and hustling to get captions written and then out on the internet. So
yeah, for sure. When we used to have to write the captions, it was quick because you could it was either there or it wasn't. There wasn't 10 frames to go through. It was like you either got it or you didn't. And you move on, and you could rip through it pretty quick. So
yeah,
it's a one advantage.
So you have all these multiple cameras during the course of a game. I want to go back to the fact that you had mentioned that you're tethered.
Oh yeah.
And all that stuff's being transmitted back to New York, right?
Correct. New Jersey. Yeah.
New Jersey. So there's somebody on the East Coast that's getting all those images and they're editing them so that they can provide all that content to the different outlets.
Well, yeah, the league has a deal with Getty Images, so all of our stuff is posted on Getty. We have that crazy, awful credit line, which is NBAE via Getty Images, blah blah. It goes on forever, but essentially they're distributing our images, which is awesome. But everything has to go through them. So all my cameras are connected to basically a router at the basket, including my handhelds. And so as I shoot, it's instantly going back to New Jersey. And then someone sitting there at the edit desk, whoever has my game that night, they're pulling pictures, they're writing captions, and then posting it to Getty. Which, like I said, good and bad. Like it's eliminated that whole process post game. Like when the game's over, I just turn stuff off and I'm done. But at the same time, you're never happy with the edit because, you shot the game and you know how it goes. Like that's the worst part for me is to hand over my game. You've done everything that you can, set up everything, shot everything. And there's even things that you want to edit in a certain way, but you can't control that part. So you just hope that either they see it or understand what you're trying to do, as the images come through. So definitely frustrating part of it, but I understand their side of it as well.
So that's kind of interesting. And I can imagine that would be pretty tough to hand your edit over to somebody else. And because they don't know, and inevitably, like I learned a long time ago that if there's anything remotely that you were like kind of on the fence about, or you don't like, you don't send that image. Like it's not worth sending that image just so they have a bunch of images. Like you edit it to the stuff that you would want to see that represents your work. Cause otherwise inevitably they pick the one that you least like.
Either too many, or just, the wrong ones. Yeah. And it's so hard because you've done it so long and I've done it so long that it's so easy for us to see which ones work and which ones don't right away. It's young editors. It's definitely a learning curve for sure. And a lot of stuff that's local too, like the car dealership king is sitting courtside. That could be a meaningful picture to the team, but somebody in New York could care less who that person is, whether it's a local celebrity or a check presentation or some things. A lot of that stuff can get frustrating that it's not posted, but there's ways around it and ways to provide it to the team still. But asset management is, I feel like we've been struggling with that for 20 years.
Sure.
It's always something that needs improvement.
So the edit that you're doing after the fact, you yourself, that's when you get to provide those images that you feel are still important that maybe weren't in the edit that the NBA does.
Correct. And then that's what I provide to the team. I want to give the team the best stuff as far as what I know what they need or what they've asked for. So that second edit or that edit that I do is strictly for the team. Yeah.
Gotcha. Which brings me to another point. So it's not just the coverage of that game and shooting shoes and guys coming in, the players coming in for the night for that game, but every aspect of that game you are having to photograph. Like I watched you. There's certain things I don't have to cover because somebody in Spain is not going to. They don't care.
Right.
Like depending on who the celebrity is, courtside or whatever, they might.
Right.
But there's a lot of stuff that you end up covering that is for the team that
for sure.
Think about that you have to go photograph. It could be a dance troupe, a local dance troupe before the game, and you're out there having to photograph that, or Rocky the mascot doing his thing during the course of the game. There's a multitude of things.
Right. And so, I have Bart that helps me, and that's a huge part of it is just getting help. And he's able to help me with everything, really. Any shooting stuff, setting stuff up, filling in for me. Having a great assistant is a huge advantage, and I definitely have a great assistant. That's for sure.
Yeah. I see you guys, man. You're just all game long. We'll pass each other in the tunnels and stuff. And you guys are hustling back and forth to try to, get your job done. I mean, there's a ton to it. It's not just plopping down in your camp, your camp chair and covering the game.
I mean, that's the best part, right? Like that's the part where you can sit down and you're like, all right, let's make some pictures, have some fun, because you've done all the other crap all day long and emails and setting stuff up and running around like crazy. And, those 2 hours is the best part. For sure.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest part of it.
Yeah,
and most enjoyable, like you said, because you're just focused on the action and stuff.
Yeah, you just lose your mind in whatever you're doing. The creative part, for sure.
Yeah. So you work with an assistant, Bart, who I know, and then you bring in some freelancers as well, right? To help you out.
Again, it's just like you said. If the marketing department, Kroenke Sports is a huge. The Rapids, the Nuggets, the Avalanche, the buildings, the venues, everything. So it's a huge company entity. And so they have a lot of needs, whether it's marketing, sponsorship, community relations. So we do have to hire, freelancers quite a bit to help with that stuff. Like, just shooting signage throughout the game or billboards, digital boards, all that stuff.
All these things that people have no idea that are, that has to be covered, that's all stuff they need for marketing, like you said, in social media. And now they have social media people too, right? That work for all the teams.
Yeah. So in addition to all the stuff that we're doing, you have all those social media people, which they're covering a lot of the same stuff, but at speed, I think is the best way. That quality is really not the factor. It's speed. So, there's a huge department of those people as well. And that's really, as you can see, that's changed everything. It's more people in the way. It's more important than it's a lot of stuff now. It's crazy. Like the ebbs and flows of social media. It's an ever changing, strange dynamic for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I just in the 4 years that I covered the Nuggets, I definitely saw a change in the whole thing. You'd be you be in there and all of a sudden you're like, who's this guy?
Right. The phone comes in front of you or
right. And it's not just photographers and social media people. There's tons of video people that work for different outlets,
bloggers, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And as a photographer, you need to be cognizant. I think we're pretty cognizant of our fellow photographers, and try not, you're trying to frame up a shot, but at the same time, 4 other people around you, you're trying to not get in the way of the video guy that's shooting, or the network or whatever.
Right.
Or there's so many people, you don't even know who they're with or who they work for, or at least I don't. You probably do, because you talk to all those people, but
it's definitely a new dynamic for sure. Forever it was just a small group of photographers and the TV, and TV always wins because TV for the most part pays the bills. And so, it's the general understanding of the hierarchy. Like, you have to give respect to those guys because they're producing the show, and then that's what pays the bills. But it's like this whole group of, I sound like an old guy, these young kids coming in here and just running wild. It's definitely, you want them to understand how it should work. But maybe that's the way things are going to be. So maybe I need to understand how things are going to be. It's just change, I guess.
Yeah. You just adjust to it and deal with it and move on.
Yeah.
And I, as a person, I don't work for a major news service. So like, I think you even mentioned one time, you're like, you're the only guy I've ever met in all the different, all the different cities that I go to from your news service. Like, I've never even heard of FA.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, well, that was a little surprising to me, but I'm on the lower echelon of people, and access has changed as far as, if you're able to be on the court and shooting over the years. And you've always been kind to me and hooked me up when you can, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. If there's additional network coverage that night, there's less spots on the floor. And depending on who's actually shooting, there's just a ton of people, and then the access has gotten a little bit tighter over the years. So, but you said even for yourself that you've gone to, other cities, traveled with the team, and there's been times when you don't even get a floor spot.
For sure. Yeah.
You're shooting up above with a long lens to try to cover a game. And it's a whole different beast when you're having to shoot up above as opposed to on the floor. But
I mean, at least, when I get that situation, at least I can still put my remote cameras on the basket and fire them from that. That's the one thing. At least I can still do that to still get some of that close action. But super frustrating. I mean, we used to line the baseline and then go up the sides. Like, back in the day in the old Chicago Stadium, it was like, 45 guys on each baseline. And it probably was a safety hazard, to be honest. But, it's just that it's changed from having 90 people on the court to, 12 or, and 2 of those are ball boys. So, it shrinks every year, it seems like. And it'll probably get to a point where it's going to be, just a couple people, which is really a bummer.
Well, there's definitely it's kind of fun as a photography. There's a group of photographers that all know each other, and there's a lot of camaraderie there. You're in a different position doing what you do because you have so many more responsibilities. But, with the media guys, we usually kind of hang together.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, in addition to doing your job, there's a lot of banter that goes on, in the background, and it can be pretty amusing. It makes it fun, and I know you guys get some of that, but because you have so many different responsibilities, you guys are so busy. I know you don't get part of that all the time.
Oh, I get all that when I go to the other venues, when I go shoot. When some guy's eating chips and it's driving the other guy crazy, all the press room banter, and I love that stuff too. I don't think I want to deal with it all the time, but It's definitely a tight, dysfunctional family for sure.
You hit the nail right on the head. Dysfunctional. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it.
Well, I mean, you take a bunch of guys that are kind of type A go-getters, and they're trying to cover the same thing. Like, guys are going to butt heads and compete, and which is the fun of it. But at the same time, it creates some dysfunction as well, which can be fun too.
Yeah. As long as you're not on the receiving end of that.
Which we all have been, for sure.
That brings me to another point, and another thing that you have to be aware of as a photographer, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. One of the rules that the NBA implements is that, so no plastic hard lens hoods.
Right.
And I know that I've been early on, because there's nobody that tells you these things, like you get your credentials as a news service. So
right.
First time in there, I'm kind of looking around, taking my cue from some of the old grizzled veterans that are there. But yeah, you need to have either no lens hood or a rubber lens hood. They're, in case somebody plows into you, which does happen.
Sure.
They don't want the players getting hurt, and it's big money, and you don't want to be that guy that caused injury. I mean, and I saw it a couple times, and I always feel bad, and luckily, knock on wood, it's never been me, but I think it was a couple of years ago, Russell Westbrook slipped on somebody's camp chair, while they were back, transmitting images. It's like, the last thing you want to do is have, leave your camp chair, which is pretty standard. We've been doing that forever. And,
right.
And then the rules change, at least for that season. It's like, all right, if you're going to leave and you have a camp chair, you need to take it with you.
Because take it all with you. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want somebody tearing their ACL or twisting their ankle, and ending their season or a career. Be that guy. Or occasionally, you're not the only one that always gets to rig stuff. And, something falls off the backboard and somebody falls on a pocket wizard or another piece of equipment. That could be nightmarish. So there's a lot to it, It's
for sure.
It's an intense time being down there on the court and a few hours that we're there. What other kind of weird rules are, and not weird, but just rules that photographers have to adhere to?
Oh, the biggest ones are always, whether it's basketball or football or wherever, it's where you can shoot from, right? Like, none of us want to be told where we can shoot from. Like, as soon as you tell us that, then we want to shoot from wherever we can't shoot from, just because you told us we couldn't. But in every sport, there's all those weird rules. In the NBA, like, you can't even have your foot across that line, or someone's watching on TV, and then at the timeout, some security guard will come over to you and say, you got to have your toe behind that line. Football's the same way. If you're across those white lines and how strict they are. I think the other one is the 30-minute rule. Like, if you don't have a vest, you can't be on the court at an NBA game 30 minutes before the game. And depending on your color of vest, where you can go. So yeah, there's a lot to navigate. Colors, codes, restrictions, where you can shoot from. I'm trying to think of one of the weird ones. I'm not sure. Who gets free food? Who doesn't get free food?
Right.
Yeah. So
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
And sometimes you want that free food, but it's still free.
Right. Exactly. No, and I'm one of those ones that does not get free food.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. In Major League Baseball, you can't have your monopod in certain, on the grass or whatever.
Well, and then how, like, park to park, too. Sorry to interrupt you, but it just reminded me of Coors Field, like one of the most restrictive places you can shoot. Like, I feel like they're watching you and dictating where you can shoot the whole time. That place, I just want to break the rules there just to break them. Like, it makes me crazy.
I've been yelled at a few times.
Don't have ice cream. Man. Yeah, like all that stuff. And that place I've like snuck to the bullpen, and you try and shoot over the end, but you have to hide your credential and act like you're a fan, because it's okay if a fan does it, but you as a professional can't do that. So it's like, it's insane. Every building has its quirks and its nuances and rules, and getting to know the people that will allow you to do, certain things, or park your car or load your car, all those. Every day is a constant battle of those little things, for sure.
So how many sports have you shot? Different types, like basketball, football, obviously.
I mean, every major sport. I'm trying to think of, I've done at least one boxing match, or, anything from cycling to horse racing. Trying to think of a sport that I want to shoot. There's stuff at the Olympics that you see that you really want to shoot, like fencing. Fencing looks awesome and photographs really well. I have no interest in fencing, but just those different things you see at the Olympics. And just shooting the Olympics alone is ridiculous. But I'm trying to think of, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. It's a tough one.
Because I see you have a variety of like tennis and, just a ton of different variety of sports, soccer.
90% of it's hoops, though. It's, that's my bread and butter. And then everything else is just filled in around that. Like when I have free time, or, something that I like. Probably my favorite is cycling. Believe it or not, I'm a big cycling fan, and shooting from the back of a motorcycle is a ridiculous experience, like really, really cool. So I'd have to put that one up there as probably my favorite. Not something I'd want to do every day, but an awesome experience, really cool.
So where did you shoot cycling at?
They used to have a stage race through Colorado, like a week-long stage race, and Doug Penzinger with Getty Images used to hire me to go with him, and one of the greatest photographers, that guy, unbelievable guy. But I would do that. I think I did it for 3 or 4 years, and he would let me ride the moto every once in a while, and just insanity. Yeah. Unbelievable experience. So I'd put that as probably my favorite thing. I don't know why. It was just a really cool experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you shot the Olympics. So what was that experience like?
Just an Olympics fanatic ever since I was a kid. Like growing up in Colorado, the Winter Olympics were just, I remember every 4 years just glued to the TV watching those. So to actually go to an Olympics was pretty mind-blowing for me. I usually only cover basketball when I'm there. But you can sneak into some of the other stuff. Like I've snuck into some of the cycling events at the Olympics. It was pretty cool, but it's harder and harder to do now. But Athens was my first one I went to, 2002 in Utah for the Winter Games. And I was just doing some lighting and some stuff for Sports Illustrated, but actually shooting 2004 in Athens. So usually the Olympic basketball is not that exciting. 2008, it was that was the Redeem team with Kobe and LeBron, and then they played Spain, and that was one of the best basketball games I've ever seen. Just a great game. And totally unexpected. You just thought we'd kill Spain, and it was an amazing game. So those moments for sure. But the Olympics are awesome. Like you're there with, some of your photographer heroes, photographers from all over the world, like just the cultures and the people. Like that's to me, that's the coolest event to cover as a photographer for sure. That experience is really cool.
So let me ask you about the business side of being an NBA photographer, a team photographer. You're an independent contractor. You're not, like a salaried position with the NBA. How does that work?
Basically they pay you a day rate. It depends on what it is. They have a few different structured things, but they just hire you to work for a day. That reflects the usage and what they get out of it. We used to work off of a resale thing. So you would get a smaller day rate, and then you would get 50% on the back end of what they sold. which was good and bad. It was high and it was low, but now this is, for me, it's much better because that's consistent. I know I'm going to work X number of days, and it's more like getting a paycheck, which when you have a family and kids and stuff is definitely more important than hoping you get the 2K cover and, you get a big check. Or the revenue sharing part of it was always kind of hit and miss. So it was probably the same amount, but it just came in different proportions. So this is just a better setup for my situation.
Makes sense. With the rest of the photo industry, like day rates really have not changed in the last 25 years.
For sure.
It's crazy, man, that's the way it works. But has it been different as a team photographer?
It really hasn't. I think our rates reflect the industries. Like, they just have not changed. It's crazy. And if anything, they go down. I don't know what that is, because I know those images are still getting used, especially with what we do with the industry that the NBA has become. That I'm surprised that our rates haven't changed in a long time. But, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, so I can't really say.
Sure. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I'm just curious how. I know how, like editorial rates and commercial rates, it's, as a whole, like you said, actually, they've gone down over time, with inflation and everything else. It is a little crazy.
It's weird that I guess I'm thankful that they haven't changed, because I feel like the trend for the most part is they've gone down. And if I were to tell my kids, I'd be like, don't become a photographer, because it's not a growing industry by any means. It's awesome, but,
you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you love what you do. And
100%.
Somebody's willing to, pay you money to do this, and you're able to support your family and make a decent living.
Correct.
But you're not going to get rich.
No, that's not why you do it at all. Yeah, for sure.
So the NBA owns the NBA images, or does Getty own them?
I think that they've sold the rights to sell them.
Okay.
So for a period of time, the gist of it is that the NBA still owns them all, but they're selling that license for a time period, is what I think it is.
Yeah. You don't receive any kind of commission off those.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
But I think what you get paid is based on that. So essentially it kind of is.
Sure.
That makes
6 to 1, half dozen of the other.
And because of the way things operate, even though you take those photographs, they own all the rights and figure out how to disperse all those images. You don't get yourself to turn around and say, hey, I have this iconic Kobe image, you can't go around and be selling that image elsewhere, correct?
Correct. Yeah. As far as the NBA goes, every client's different. But as far as the NBA goes, that's how they're set up. They basically own all of it. So
that's true. I forgot. It depends on the sport, because every sport operates in their own thing.
Yeah.
I imagine that's kind of hard to keep everything straight as far as who does what and when. And
oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's just being a small business owner. All that stuff's, you figure it out as you go along.
Right. Yeah. That's
and nobody teaches you that. That's always the fun part of the whole thing.
The learning curve, right? Like you can learn how to, set up all the equipment and do all the lighting and everything else, but they don't talk about the ins and outs of business and
accounting and taxes and contracts and health insurance and all that stuff. That's important stuff.
So that brings me back to a question we haven't asked in a while, but we're in a different scenario today talking to you, Garrett. But would you suggest for somebody that was looking into getting into a photography career or an art career in general, taking business classes so that you understood how all that stuff operates and works?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a business. I don't know what that means. If you said to me, if you could take a class that was designed to starting a small business or running a small business, 100%. Like, it was, you're always the network of photographers and friends that were artists, and what'd you do about this? And did you get equipment insurance? Or, use this. It's all trial and error. It's asking questions. But man, if you could have started out with like a course or a class that was, you should start an LLC for this to protect yourself from lawsuits, all that stuff would have been super helpful early on. Taxes. I should start one of those classes and make some money because I think everybody would take it for sure.
Yeah.
No, I agree, man. I think you should. If the next time that you're on pause, which hopefully isn't anytime soon again,
Right.
you start writing down some of this stuff, put it together, your own little,
Yeah, but I mean, whether I'm a yoga instructor or a photographer or want to start any small business, it would apply to that. It's not just what we do. It's just nobody really helps you do that stuff, which is strange. Or maybe that help is out there and I just never found it. But
or you don't think to ask, right? Like when you were coming up,
yeah,
that's the last thing on your mind. You're concerned about how equipment works and how to set up strobes. The last thing on your mind is like, should I be putting money away for my 401k or?
Totally. And then 10 years have gone by and you're like, damn, I haven't done any of that. I haven't put money away. I haven't did I pay taxes? All that stuff that you screw up when you're young and learn all those lessons. But if you're crazy enough to go into this field, that would be the smartest thing you could do is learn all that stuff early on.
You were in LA during the early years of Kobe.
Yeah.
How was that when you heard the news about him passing? It had to have been kind of crazy to hear that.
I don't know if you were at that game. It was the Rockets game. The Nuggets were going to play the Rockets. And, maybe a half an hour before that game this past season, like in the spring, the word spread through the building. The helicopter crash, the crash had happened. And it was just surreal. Like it was, it didn't sink in. It didn't seem real. But, my experiences with Kobe were, a huge part of the beginnings of my career. I moved back to LA to work with Andy to be his assistant when Shaq and they drafted Kobe. Like it was the craziest, that was back at the Forum. So my memories of Kobe were that his rookie season, young, crazy, like Del Harris, I think was the coach and would hardly play him. Had great memories and I don't really know the Kobe that Kobe became. I knew that Kobe as a young, 18-year-old kid. And so it was, total bummer to hear the news. Especially what a career. And just to watch him as a father, as a movie mogul, all the stuff that he was getting into. Totally depressing, really.
Yeah.
I imagine the whole atmosphere was pretty dim that day.
Yeah, it was, that was not a good one.
So over the years, are there certain games or certain things? I mean, you alluded to, covering the Olympics. Are there certain things that kind of stick out in your mind? Like, wow, I was a part of that. And once again, you're in a very historic situation during this pandemic where you're going to be covering games that have been covered, without getting into the nitty gritty of it all, but it's kind of a historical moment and you're there for it, covering these games that they're going to be covered the way no games have ever been played.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is strange, as you know, but to be lucky enough to be here, to be a part of a very small group to cover something, a once in a century event, and then to try and have basketball during it. And you think about it a lot. How do you cover it? How do you document it? The health and safety part of the whole thing. It's just tough to figure out right now. I think hopefully we do a good job at it so that these images say something from it. It'll definitely look different, with no fans and it's going to be a whole different thing, but I'm sure it'll, I'll remember this forever. Without a doubt that Jordan's last shot, those games, all those Jordan finals, those are vivid in my mind. Like, it happened when I was young and everything was just like fresh and amazing. And, it was the greatest show on earth. And so those games are super vivid. And the game I talked about in the Olympics from the 2008 men's final, that Spain USA game was an unbelievable game. One of those, the goosebumps are, you try and calm yourself during those moments because you almost become a fan because they're so, just amazing. But you got to focus on capturing the moments and doing your job. But you can feel that it's a huge moment or a big event. And a couple of years ago, was it? I should know the dates on this. It was Warriors and Cavs. It was a Game 7. It was a terrible series. It went 7 games, but every game was a blowout in the first game for one team, and then it'd go back the other. So 6 games of blowouts of just like kind of boring, and then you get to this Game 7 that essentially came down to the last shot. I mean, the LeBron block. There was just cool moments to capture in that game, and so recently that's one of the ones that sticks out for sure. But I'd have to think about that one a little more to pick out any others. But those are definitely the first ones that come to mind.
Do you think the talent pool has changed at all over the course of the years from when, you got to see some pretty incredible players coming up? I know in like the NFL, the talent pool, we don't have like that, and I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, so I apologize. But
you're fine.
Like the quarterback pool has shrunk considerably. Like, the Mannings and the Elways and, the Troy Aikens, and there doesn't seem to be that pool of quarterbacks in the NFL like there used to be because the sport has kind of changed. Right. It's evolved a little bit. Have you seen much of a change like that in the NBA? I mean, I still think there's extreme talent there, but I don't think it's been my opinion is it hasn't been as affected as, say, the NFL has.
Yeah, because I think the NBA is still growing in popularity and, and it's a world-wide, league almost. I think it's changed drastically, but I don't think in a bad way at all. It's just different. If anything, it's bigger and stronger than ever. But I don't see any of the changes being bad for sure. Just entirely different style of game. Just the way the game is on a global scale. But I think I look at football. And I think football is on the decline for sure. Like, I don't want my kids to play football. They didn't play football. I didn't force them to, but like, we definitely didn't encourage it. Like, so it's a different kind of mentality. Like when I was a kid, that's all I watched, was a huge football fan. I'm now a much bigger soccer fan. So sports are definitely changing. And I think, baseball struggles too. But I think basketball is definitely still going strong for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely become more, you alluded to it before, you said global, an international game. And it's exciting. I think, it's by far my favorite sport to shoot. And actually, I've had the opportunity for the new service I shoot for to cover a fair amount of soccer over the years.
Right.
And that can be pretty fun to watch too, but hands down NBA basketball. I just, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. When an NBA game is good, it's really good, like tough to beat. And there's a lot of good games throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that it's easier to shoot, but there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
As far as action, it's not like watching a baseball game where, man, if you looked away for 2 seconds and it's a really boring game and there's like one good play in the entire 9 innings,
I always think of that, the one double play. It was the only picture of the day, and I was eating a peanut or something. Like, you just stop for a second. Like, baseball drives me nuts. Yeah.
I can't imagine covering a whole season of Major League Baseball, man.
Painful.
I hear some of my other fellow photographers that have to cover it, all those games. I'm like, oh man, and like I said, I haven't covered a ton of Major League Baseball, but I'm like, I surely wouldn't want to have to cover that entire season.
You lose all creativity. It doesn't hold my interest. I get the beauty of the game and the nuances and stuff, but having to cover it, I just, it doesn't hold my attention. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basketball is definitely a lot faster game.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot of opportunities. So
Yeah, definitely.
Let me ask you this question: as things have changed, and we'll start to wrap things up here, but have you been required to start shooting video at all, or is that something?
No one's ever asked me. We have, the NBA has an entire video department separate. So I've never really had that. I'm interested in it, and I love the idea of telling a story in that way. And there's so many times that I see something, I was like, that's so much better if I shot that in video. So I really have an interest in it, but I'm so overwhelmed by the editing part of it that I don't know how to do that. And I would be so slow at it that I couldn't tell the story the way I wanted to, because I'd be hampered by the editing part of it. So I need to hire somebody that just kills it on the editing part, and then I'd shoot video, I guess. But I just never have gone down that road. But I do, like, it interests me for sure.
I was just curious if you'd been asked to do that, because I was, as things evolve, and especially with digital photography and the cameras being able to do all these different things now, shooting video, high-end video, and then the stills, I get asked that all the time. So I was just curious, in your world, if you've come across that and if you've been asked to do that. But it's two totally different mindsets, and
Yeah, for sure.
Switching from stills, it's fine if you're just shooting stills, but having to shoot video and stills at the same time, it's being able to switch gears, unless you're really good at both, would be really difficult,
Yeah, I've lately, last few years, I just have been trying to find different ways to do kind of what I do, in that we can control the lighting, and we basically light stuff in a very general way, but trying to take that and light it how you would light a portrait, or creating an environment that's not what you see, because we can do that. And so that's some of the stuff I try and do during the playoffs and finals that I'm lucky enough that the league allows me to do. And that interests me way more than any video or any other thing that I can do. It's some of those lighting things that are really unique and just fun, creative.
It's cool that they give you that creative latitude to just do your thing.
It's ridiculous that I'm in that situation, because we have a couple guys, Andy, who I used to work for, and Nat Butler, who are the two main photographers with the league. And those guys will crush a game. They'll cover everything. They'll see things that I don't see. They're just so good at telling the story of the games. And that's what they do. And then the league allows me to kind of do my thing and try and capture moments in a unique way, where I don't have to capture everything. So that pressure is not on me to get, every turnover and every jumper, and that I can go for these little moments that are unique. And it's so cool to do that. Like that's probably the coolest part about working for the league, is having the ability to do something that unique and creative. It's really cool.
Now, when it comes to promote the promo stuff of like the players and all that, you shoot all that as well, right? So that's another thing that is probably part of your job description.
Oh, like media day and
like media day and all the player shots that that they put on the internet for like the roster, but media day, it seems like you get a lot of creative freedom there to kind of do some cool stuff.
For sure. That's and it's hard. You have to know how to do all that stuff and not only shoot the games, but do all the things on media day that everyone needs to make the life-size cutouts and to do the promos for Altitude and all the different in-house stuff and advertising that they need to do, and all the things the league needs as well. So that's the stuff I really like, because it's different. It's a different problem presented. Like, how do you create this image? How do you work with the athlete? Those are fun. I always like doing that. Media day is a lot of work and it's a big day, but when you get those individual shoots, those are always cool. Like, and no one ever sees that stuff, until the image comes out, but they don't know where it came from, or how it was produced. So
Yeah, I imagine that's a lot of fun.
yeah, for sure.
It's different for the people that work for the different news services. Some people that have been doing it for a long time have a different relationship with certain players, but you get to actually interact. That's another thing that I guess another rule is that, as a media, just a regular media person, there's certain parameters put on me as far as how I interact with players. And you are in a different position where all these guys, you spend a lot of time with them. How is that working with all these big name athletes all the time? Is it fun?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's crazy how it's changed. How the digital age has allowed you to provide them with images a lot more, which has helped your relationship. Before, when you were shooting slides, like you could shoot an image of a player, something with his family or something that you wanted to give him, but you'd have to wait, 2 weeks to a month to either get a copy of it or, it was such a difficult process to try and establish a relationship with a player like that. It's so much easier now, and it helps everything. It helps you create more content. It establishes trust between you and them. Because really, I'm just a propaganda machine. Like, I'm trying to make those guys and the team look as good as possible. I'm not there to tell anything other than I'm just trying to make them look good is really my objective. So those relationships are huge, and they definitely have. It's been easier now to build those, and that's an awesome part of it that I'm privileged, to get to build those. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool. Last but not least, if you were a kid listening to this podcast and thinking, "Wow, what a killer job Garrett Ellwood has," what kind of advice would you give to them? Somebody that's interested in shooting sports and having a career in it.
I remember being in college, and I had a professor. We probably had 15 to 20 people in the class, and he said, "Listen, if there's 2 of you that are working in this business in 5 years, you're lucky." And I was just convinced in my mind that I was going to be one of those 2. So no matter what it is, just go all in on it. Because I was like, there's no other option. I'm not going to work at McDonald's or dig ditches. I was like, I'm going to be in photography no matter what. And so you assist, you grind, you do whatever it takes. And when you're young, that's easier to do. But whatever you want to be, just go at it with that attitude that there's only 2 spots that you're going to be one of the guys in that spot. I don't know why that stuck, it stuck in my mind, but I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to make it happen no matter what. It just happened to be photography. Now, would I recommend it? Who knows, but it's going to be an entirely different thing in 5 years, and maybe it goes away and maybe it's all video and drones and who knows. So do what you love.
That's great advice, man. If you really want it that bad, you can make it happen, but you got to want it, and it definitely hasn't gotten easier over time since we started out in the business about the same time. So,
but for me, not sorry. The hardest part of that whole thing is, how did my parents get that into me? Like, as a parent, that's what I want to get into my kids. Like, you'll be so much more fulfilled if you're doing something that you love. I somehow they either taught me that or instilled it, and I don't know how they did it, but I'm trying to do that with my kids because it was awesome.
I think it's a thing that you recognize, and maybe after the fact, because some people I think just have that in their DNA. Because I've talked to people that were in really terrible situations growing up that saw themselves out of it, and certain people just have that thing. I'm not talking about us, but
Right.
like I've interacted with people that I was like, wow, how are you able to see yourself out of that situation and follow your dream and make this happen when everything was
Right.
against you? We were in a different position. I'm assuming that you. I had a great childhood,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
my parents didn't say, they weren't like overly like, hey, you should, follow your dream or whatever. It was more of a pragmatic thing. Like, you go and you get a degree and then you have a 9-to-5 job and, the standard American dream or whatever. But I think some people just have that thing where like, and I think that's why we're photographers. Photographers,
Right.
I think, have a tendency not to want to follow rules.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine going to a regular 9-to-5 job where you had to wear a tie and, you were on the computer all day long dealing with some kind of paperwork or some kind of craziness like that? Like,
it's the absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do that.
right?
They're heroes. No. They're doing the work that artists don't want to do. But
man.
No, I mean, yeah, following your heart. And I think a lot of it is just, there's those people that's what they're going to do no matter what. And that determination is what drives them. I want to be a photographer. I want to do sports photography, and nothing's going to stop me from it. I think that's the key. Yeah, for sure.
And then recognizing those opportunities, like you said, you hounded Andy nonstop, and being tenacious about it. And then when you got the opportunity, you saw it and we were like, this is what I'm going to do. So you took full advantage of it.
And I think when I got the opportunity, it was kind of at a low point for me because I've been, like working at I was golf course maintenance, which it's just a couple of these jobs that was, they were hourly minimum wage things. And you were so hungry that given the opportunity, you just did everything you could to succeed at it. So everything just really came together at a perfect time for me.
That's awesome.
Who knows?
Well, man, I'm not going to take up any of your time. I really appreciate the fact. Well, I guess you have all the time in the world at the moment, but
I got
you're in a very different situation than from some of our other guests, I guess.
It's almost feeding time though. So it's
right. Yeah, exactly. So it's going on 5:30 in Florida, right? Yeah. Yep. So about time to get some grub.
That's right.
And I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us. It's a pleasure to know you. And I really appreciate all the kindness and generosity you've shown me over the years when I had the opportunity to cover NBA. And I appreciate the time you spent with us talking about what you do, because I think it's incredibly interesting. And it's one of those things, one of the things that I've always enjoyed about my job is talking with people that have interesting jobs. I get educated and it's like, wow, somebody makes a living doing that. And I think that's what our listeners will get from this, that, wow, there's somebody out there that they get to cover NBA and all these other amazing sports and get paid to do it. So it's very cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
And I have to say, I've been looking at your Instagram page as we've been talking, and you have some just absolutely wonderful images on there. And it's Instagram.com/GWE photo. And is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Wes.
I want to make sure I wasn't giving out somebody else's. No, you have some great photos on there. I love them. So congratulations and kudos to you for your career. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. Yeah. So appreciate it.
Garrett Ellwood, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. For the Tenant Podcast, this is Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown. Have a great week.